Meeting. Okay, I just started the meeting for the San Rafael City Council Finance Subcommittee. Calling the meeting to order, we start with open time for public expression. Anyone in the room? Not seeing any member of the public. We'll move to approval of the minutes. Are there any changes, Councilmember Hill?
No changes.
Okay, with that, we have to do like a motion. Which is can we move the minutes? It's weird.
Should probably
Just make a motion.
I move that we approve the minutes for the last meeting.
Okay, I'll second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, here we go. I think item 4 has been changed to a different agenda. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'll speak to that.
Yeah.
The staff have been working together on a nexus study. It's somewhat complicated, and it has a larger framework and context in addition to the fee, which is kind of looking at what's the story around the fees related to the Park and Rec master plan. And so the staff, we wanted to do a little bit of a deeper analysis before we came to you with kind of a policy recommendation on the fee structure. Because there's two, just to keep it very simple, there's two types of fees, the one that's got the subdivision, one that's just straight development. And, Micah has been doing a great job in kind of reevaluating all of these fees and what that fee structure is. But we also have other fees that we're looking at a public safety impact fee because of the growing development and need for increased services in police and fire. All these fees are a package, right, for the developer. And so although we've got a strong nexus study that supports this fee, we want to look at it in context of the others and make sure it's a rounded out package because they all impact one another. And there is some discretion on how we structure this fee, and we want to think about that in context of those. So we're going to bring it back to the finance subcommittee when we've got it in a kind of a comprehensive package.
Fantastic. So I take it will not be coming then the September 2nd meeting because we'll have another finance subcommittee meeting and looking at, as you said, holistically before it goes to the council. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or is it a timing thing?
Piece of it may come forward.
Okay.
That's but that's something that we'll follow up on kind of exactly what the path forward is and provide plenty of public notice if we are going to proceed with a piece of it for September 2nd.
Okay. Councilmember Hill, any questions?
Yeah, I think this is probably obvious, but I'll ask it anyways, that the criticality of this is ensuring that as development pipeline continues to move through, that we have certitude on fees in advance so that it's not surprising. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct.
Okay.
And we do have fees on the books now. So, but you're absolutely right. We're trying to make them really simple, straightforward, clear. So as developers coming in, they have that whole understanding about what that impact is going to be on them as they move the project forward. But there is a time sensitivity to moving these forward. So we will not delay.
Okay. Great, thank you. And we'll move right along to the next item on our agenda, which is preliminary 2024-25 unaudited financial results.
Okay,
Ignacio.
we can do that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
I am going to quickly share screen. And it's just so that you're not just looking at numbers.
Yeah.
I'm not spewing
Okay.
numbers out at you.
Okay.
So again, by way of context, here we are.
Sorry,
Do you
Paul,
think
you're
you're
going to
sharing
share screen.
I'm about to share this.
Okay, great.
We believe in you.
I'll just go. Yeah,
Okay.
so just by way of, again, context, we are here first week in August, and we are really in the thick of kind of closing the books for 24-25. So some of the numbers we're going to share, I think, are pretty well settled, and then there are still some moving pieces to where particularly the revenues are going to land. We've not received, for instance, our fourth quarter sales tax payment, which is a significant payment that then accrues back. And so bottom line being is this is subject to change and potentially some further refinement. And I just wanted to, we are planning to have a report in front of the council on September 2nd that will essentially have three components. And one is the informational piece, which will be, again, unaudited results, which will be a little bit more firm, pending the results of the audit. The second part of the council items is I think the council has seen this before, but we're renewing down the list. There may be the need for some council action on some year-end budget adjustments to address some corrections and transfers. Councilmember Hill, you might remember last year, that list was getting shorter and shorter. We brought it to you before the close of the year, and you asked if we were going to continue to see these types of corrections at year end, and we're really getting down to there may not be any, but to the extent that there will be, we'll be bringing those as part of that agenda item. And then the last piece, which we'll touch on quickly here, is as we transition from the fiscal year ended June 30, 24-5 into the now current fiscal year, there are budget appropriations that essentially roll from one fiscal year to the next. They fall under two categories. All of our encumbered purchase orders and contracts that are technically legal obligations of the city that we've committed, that are work in process. The budget resolution adopted by the council already authorized the carryover of those items, but there's a handful of items that we'll be bringing forward to the council to seek approval to carry over what we're calling unencumbered appropriation. Something that was budgeted last fiscal year. We still need it. It was for a purpose. It wasn't contractually obligated. So we're going to get some, and a big part of that you'll see in a minute is the significant portion of the capital budget from 24-25. So we'll just touch on that briefly as we go. So let me just, with that background, just see if, oops, let's go down the screen. Be helpful if any of my keyboards worked. Okay, let's see, how do I load that up? I can do it this way.
Slideshow. Or you did that.
Yeah, we got it. And then I'll move the screen. So at a fairly high level, and there's a couple of things that are going to be notable to point out, hence bringing this in front of you today. This is the basically general fund revenue and expenditures adopted amended budget. The middle column that you see there, when we presented the budget, we updated projections of where we anticipated the revenues and expenditures to end as of June 30, which and those projections are sort of built into the budget development process and inform some of the recommendations and fund balances. And so we were looking a couple of months ago at hopefully being a little bit over budget on revenues, and that was actually downgraded from earlier mid-year projections. And we talked about this at the last meeting where the sales tax is just kind of flattening. That's why I'm a little bit nervous about that last fourth quarter payment we haven't seen yet. And we're anticipating the expenditures, again, in that yellow column, 111.8, which is about $1 million under budget. And if you may recall, one of the key bullet points in that is payroll was tracking pretty darn close to budget. And so this savings was anticipated primarily to be in the non-personnel category. Looking at where our unaudited results are currently, and with an estimate of, again, where that fourth quarter sales tax number is going to come in, and some cleanup on property taxes and TOT, we're going to be pretty much on budget. However, that's about $500,000 less than what we had anticipated at mid-year. I'm hoping that this is a conservative number, but we will have the final number here in the next few days, actually next week. The expenditures, still within budget. They came in a little bit higher. Now that we've actually closed at least payroll, this is kind of shocking. Out of a roughly $70 million personnel budget, we're within like $28,000 of that number.
Pretty remarkable.
That said,
Somewhat unheard of.
Yeah.
To be that.
so a couple of things. The budget, you recall, actually included a can't remember if it was 3.5%, $2.1 million in salary savings, right? So we had baked
Not
that
savings,
salary
but-
savings.
Is it savings or ones that weren't allocated because we had open positions?
It was the estimate of savings from open
Okay, just
positions.
wanted-
So it was baked into the budget.
Right.
And we basically landed right on the payroll budget. So that's good for, budgeting and sort of predictability. But as we said before, we're no longer seeing, $2, $3, $4, $5 million of year-end
Right.
salary savings, which has provided, there's a big downside to having those savings and the vacancies and service level impacts, but it's also provided a bit of a cushion to the budget and a pot of money to then be reallocated. That's no longer there. I would just say, maybe kind of selfishly for the staff team, it also showed that we were a little nervous about the costing of all of the MOUs, given that this was the year one of the 3-year contracts for all the bargaining groups. A lot of work estimating that, and looks like the budget sufficiently accounted for the cost increases associated with all the MOUs, because that's sometimes you're off just because of. But anyway, so takeaway from this is we still have a, I guess, positive contribution to the fund balance, but it's going into next year, but it is less than it's been historically. And this is about $900,000 less than what we assumed when we built the 25-26 budget. Again, I'm hoping that that improves even a little bit when we get those final numbers. Be a little concerned if it drops further with the final revenue numbers that come in. Any questions on this? I was just going to transition to.
Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
It's a non-strategic question. So the delay in receiving,
Yeah.
you said the Q4 sales, why is there a delay? Just so.
I think the short answer and the imperfect answer is that in and of itself, it's delayed because when businesses are reporting their sales tax for the period and then reporting it to the state and then the state doing the allocation, there's a built-in lag. So it's not delayed in the sense that, where's the number?
Right.
It always comes in. In fact, at year end, it's always lags throughout the year, but at year end, we literally wait for that payment, even if it arrives in late August, because it's accrued back to the year ended June 30. So we're not doing it on a cash basis. We're doing when it's received, it's accrued back to when the revenue was earned or generated.
Gotcha. So this is more just for my edification. So when these are all the point of sales tax that happen inside of San Rafael, they get kicked up to the state, and then the state just sends us the funds after it's all been accumulated.
Yeah, they distribute the funds actually through a fairly complex funding because we only retain a small portion of the sales tax that's generated. So it's all of the point of sale. And it's also a fairly long list of transactions that, for different reasons, don't have a point of sale with the nexus to the transaction, which all goes through the county pool. And then the county pool, the Marin County-wide pool, is then in turn allocated out to everybody in proportion to how the direct allocations are going. So there's layers of allocations.
Gotcha. And I think you might have characterized this, I want to make sure I heard it right, that this characterization is conservative.
It's conservative only in this sense. So we've have downgraded the sales tax projections like from mid-year to May. What we've done here is just a math exercise. We've looked at where have we typically been on August 1st compared to where we end the year, like what percentage of the total sales tax is this final payment? and it's in a range. I just took the low end.
Okay.
So I just took the low end of what we historically get as a percent of the total, which doesn't entirely account for if the overall trend is continuing to declining, that's where it can be of concern. Okay.
I don't think it's a really important question, but what does CFWD stand for?
Oh, I'm sorry. That is
Okay.
our, my internal acronym for the carry forwards, because what
okay.
this, and this is a great segue. It's a great segue. I probably just ran out of room. at
No,
the
no, no. I
top
mean,
there.
you described the difference between encumbered and unencumbered at the beginning of the meeting, but
Yeah.
I'd never seen that acronym.
So,
Thank you.
to that point, that $112 million in expenditures is actual expenditures, encumbered
In the green.
appropriations that are going to be,
In the
yes,
green,
that are,
yeah.
that are going to be carried forward. And if I could just, because this will be the action item
Yeah.
for the council. And again, these are preliminary. We're still reviewing results with the departments, still have to review them with Christine in the city manager's office. But this is essentially a high-level summary of, so the biggest ones are on here. There was one-time funding allocated in the 24-25 budget for the ERP. There was roughly $500,000 for the equity initiatives, and those were one-time fundings, but they were intended to, be spent over the, duration of the projects or over multiple years. And because these would be sort of the unencumbered amounts, there was also some council action on some contracts right at the end of the year that essentially authorized budget appropriations, but rather than appropriate them on June 30 and then carry them over. I mean, actually, that's what we're doing. We have to carry them over because the contracts wouldn't be in place yet. I'm just going to note for this group, the stipends on there is there was some funding put in last year's budget, primarily for board and commission stipends. We probably put a significant number in. We are working on a stipend policy for engagement, but rather than funding it additionally, we are going to take the funding that wasn't needed or wasn't used last year, and we're bringing that forward to at least fund the first year of what we believe to be a productive engagement stipend policy. So
on the Maya Vision,
Yeah.
I would assume that's a DPW contract. So how come it's here? I'm just, because the other ones, I guess, I don't know, it just seems unusual.
well, that's for traffic signal, but it's all in the general fund. This one is a general fund item. We're looking at it. That number may actually come down a little bit.
So you're just saying that was, the council has already approved the
contract,
amount, but
yeah.
it just, hasn't been,
The funding was put
expended.
in last year's budget
Right.
and for the 2-year contract. And so with the second contract,
yeah, no, I get it.
they didn't encumber the full amount. So it's kind of a technical, but we're going to include it in the carryover recommendation.
Okay, so maybe on
to
that
the
one,
extent
because
that's
it is departmental,
Yeah.
two are non-departmental, so maybe we're year 2 DPW, just again, trying to just,
Clarify. This is a general fund funded project, but it's for a specific department
needed.
okay,
project.
Yeah.
okay.
There's a little bit left over in the vehicle replacement fund for vehicle that was going to be ordered, but it's going to be ordered this year. So we brought it in. There are a couple items out of the technology fund. I think the last one, the first one, chamber upgrades might have just gone to council kind of at the last meeting. So that contract is still in the process of being kind of executed, but we have to go back to last year and bring the funding forward. And then our colleagues in Public Works are currently reviewing the 24-25 CIP. A little bit more context. The may recall this from the budget presentation. The 24-5 CIP, when adopted, was around $33 million, and then there were some supplemental augmentations during the course of the year, so around $35 million in total. The 25-6 capital program that came to council and was approved on June 2nd was a hair over 15 million. And I think one of the questions was, the disparity between like these bumps. And one of the things that Director Miller pointed out is the majority of a significant portion of the capital improvement program work plan for this fiscal year is basically implementing the projects that are already budgeted and funded. But if they aren't under contract and obligated, this is the method by which we will bring forward some stormwater funding, some gas tax funding, capital fund funding to, and this does two things. It helps, we're working with the work plan effort that's underway on kind of right sizing, right? How much capital programs can actually be handled in any given year with both staff capacity and funding needs. And it also, by putting it into this carry forward process, eliminates the kind of a past practice where staff would rebudget again in the next year based on an estimate of what was available, and our project reporting becomes very cumbersome when we're rebudgeting as opposed to just tracking the dollars and bringing them forward. So that's the summary of at least the context for the action item. Again, the numbers will be reviewed and refined. And I think given what we said at the outset, particularly in the general fund, but I think it's true across the board, we're going to be, I think, very scrupulous about what funding we're carrying forward, because things are continuing to get tighter and tighter, and we can maintain budget flexibility for unplanned and things that come up by only committing the funding that we know we need and that we know we're going to use, and not just bring money forward every year just to have it.
And I think I just want to add to what Paul is saying and the importance of that scrutiny. I mean, it is best practices, you know, somewhat obvious to say that we wouldn't necessarily carry everything forward, that there's and the tie to the strategic plan and the work plan is that everything that's in the work plan has to be funded, or else it's not in the work plan, right? I mean, that's part of the whole purpose of the strategic plan, is to make sure the resource alignment is there. And so, you know, just to be a little concrete about it, if like community development's budget had professional services contract money, $100,000, hopefully it's more than that, but $100,000, they'd only use 75,000 of it, not necessarily carrying over that 25,000. We're looking at then what is the next fiscal year activities and projects and initiatives. Is that carryover warranted? That example is really obvious. It's going to be warranted. There's enough projects, there's enough consultant support we need, but just to articulate kind of the phenomenon that's going on in the amount of analysis and critical thinking that goes into the departments really evaluating their budgets, and Paul and his team really kind of like in context of my office, making sure that that budgetary alignment is there.
There's also arguably not flexibility to be carrying over funding that either we don't have or isn't critically needed. So there's also let's be contained. I mean, one of the guidelines that we're going through this is was budgeted last year for a specific purpose. We still need to do it. It wasn't encumbered. The funding is still available, not just in your department budget, but in this general fund budget, because otherwise it's not carryover appropriation. We'd be coming to you for a new supplemental appropriation. So we're just trying to be a little more disciplined on how we transition from fiscal year to fiscal year.
Can I just add one more thing that occurs to me? Because as we're bringing forward fiscal year and close, we're also bringing forward the work planning, the priority area work plans for the council to adopt. One of the things, and I'm just going to call out Micah again, because we have some capacity challenges as always. So for example, code enforcement has a budget and revenue that Micah and Paul are in the process of doing kind of a deeper dive analysis of like, what are the funding sources that support that programming? Are they adequate? Are they cost recovery? And then one of the things that we're going to be bringing to the council, as you know, is the strategic plan calls for things like illegal food vending and really increasing the efforts of code enforcement in a lot of really important, high priority, visible areas. Well, what that means is, based on Micah's current operating budget for code enforcement, we have to look at what are the trade-offs maybe that we're reducing scope of services for some of the work that's kind of like the day-to-day, like they do apartment inspections. These are all health and safety. So the trade-offs can't just be we're adding more appropriations. The onus is really on staff to kind of look at those and then bring forward to the council and say, for example, we're gonna have to, this is totally hypothetical, but reduce the amount of RBR inspections or something that we do over the next 6 months in order to have the code enforcement support needed to prioritize things like illegal food vending.
So the example you gave, though, it's all within the same department. I think the council, my assumption is, so if more resources are needed because of council priorities, it actually might come from a different department, right?
What do you mean by a different department?
So
The funding?
Yes.
But the funding is all programmed and allocated with the budget to other department needs.
I know, but part of the trade-off is we can't do everything, we can't do all this good stuff we want to do. So when the prioritization, so we have the prioritization, and if there's an obvious, we'll just use code enforcement because, yeah, I mean, that's an area that our community's been really asking for. And we know we need to enhance that. I'm curious because you gave a trade-off. That means there's some other thing that you're doing that you're going to have to give up. Where when you all look at it, you might say, well, we're going to take it from Park and Rec or wherever. I'm just making it up.
Yeah. And
Because there's a contraction there because of whatever, there was additional dollars there, like.
yeah, so there was a lot of analysis. So we call this like the one-time funding pot of money. There was a lot of discussion around this table amongst all the directors about like, what are those trade-offs? They all had requests for one-time money that we had way more requests and needs than that's just always the case. And so there were trade-offs made already. And so, I mean, the example I gave is very linear. It may be within the community development department budget, we do less of something else and it's not code enforcement because we say like, that's not something we're willing to sacrifice. So the way we look at the general fund dollars is they're not really, I mean, Paul, you could probably articulate this from your perspective, but none of them belong to a department.
Right, that's-
Really,
that's-
every year they
That's what
come back
I'm
to.
basically saying, is that.
And so
Exactly.
the funding has been
Exactly.
allocated to departments
what I'm
specifically to align with the goals and objectives
That's what I'm
that we've
asking.
been directed to execute on. And so those, that negotiation, if you will, and that exercise we do every year, and we're doing it, I would say, even more deliberately and analytically, has happened. So seeing the whole totality of it is where it gets tricky for each department to say, what can I sacrifice or not do? And how do the departments support each other with that? And they are doing that in a number of areas already.
So along those lines, like an example, like for this, maybe I may look at my own CED budget as a whole, like, do I need that marketing money? Am I gonna spend that now? Or is this?
I get that.
So,
I get that. No, and I figured that you're doing that internally. I was just
Yeah.
hoping that it's also when needed.
but that's the point though, is if I look through it though, and I don't have it.
Exactly.
That's when I escalate up to Christine and Paul to say, hey, I looked across the board, there's just not here, so.
Yeah, and I think just to build on, I don't want to put word in the mayor's mouth, but what I heard was the lane lines may be erased a little bit just to say that CED may overall get a larger allocation, even if it's uncomfortable to pull it. We might be asking for an uncomfortable request, is what I think I'm hearing, to support the and we've had this discussion before about emerging priorities, and it might be a removal of that lane line as disruptive as that might be.
I think what's, to speak to Paul's comments about we're getting tighter and tighter with the labor contract. So the lens that I've been asking the team to look at it through is like, my guess is, well, if his analysis is his department can absorb whatever the goal and objective is, we can go back to the general fund. But I think what Paul is saying as your finance director is any additional appropriations from the general fund to anything at this point, we would not recommend any additional appropriations. And so the constraints have to be, we reduce a service level somewhere.
Right.
Or, and that may be, one department saying, I'm not going to do this project and we're going to supplement or augment. So there's one potential solution. Another potential solution is within that department. There's some service level reduction. And then ongoing, and you'll see this in a couple of different areas as we're looking at revenue growth or, how do we, so like, if we can achieve additional revenue sources and growth throughout the year incrementally, that's also going to we'll offset some of the need for those trade-offs. Make sense?
The only other question I have, which I'm sure will come up, I don't think it's, this is the right time, is so when it's presented to the council, just to have a part on the federal dollars. So there's been interest in the media and just to give the update, whatever that is, and I think thankfully, knock on wood, we've lost the Connecting Communities grant for the pathway, but hopefully we won't be losing much more. But just to speak to that, because I think people are really concerned. So whatever the thing is on that, important.
Yeah, and I had a question about that too, because the 1.9, didn't we have anything programmed? Because that wouldn't have covered the whole thing. Didn't we have money programmed to supplement it? Would we get some of that back because the project's not happening?
Talking about like a match to that. grant?
Didn't we have something allocated?
TAM funding?
Yeah, or something that we had from our budget that we had
Oh, I see what you're saying.
like a $500,000 or something like that.
I think in that, I'd have to double check with April, but I think because there was some TAM money for design, we're just phasing it. So our money would still kind of match the design phase and we'd have to go for additional grants for the actual.
What I mean is, do we recover any of that because we're not going to spend it because the project was basically either suspended indefinitely? Or
I
maybe
think that
misunderstanding.
the city's contribution was toward the design phase
Yeah.
anyhow.
We hadn't allocated anything yet. Okay.
Not to the actual construction piece. So it still makes sense, I think, to invest because we've got the TAM dollars in doing that design and it may be there's a waiting period if additional funds don't manifest.
So we would not recommend pulling.
We would not.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, you're good.
We could highlight the loss of federal funds by having an action to reduce the budget and deappropriate it, but because normally, council action is needed to amend the budget, and there's a good legal question on whether we need council action to remove the funding. But we can talk about that.
Yeah. I think just
I think to
however you
hi-
want to talk
To
about it.
highlight it,
Yeah, however you
you know,
wanna
if
highlight it.
there is an appropriation, assuming we're getting those funds and now we know we're not,
Dollars are in this capital budget.
we should, I think we should pull them out and I think having that be really transparent is important. Because again, we're part of what we're trying to do is manage expectations. The community expects us to deliver on these things and need to understand what's happening at the federal level and how that is impacting like real life projects that are really important. So.
Just on that
Okay,
note, and I
yeah.
don't want to talk about school, we have built in, not so much into the budget, but in the kind of reserve, we have set aside general fund dollars, city dollars, that could be, if needed, when needed, be appropriated for, priority council projects. I would just say that doesn't necessarily mean it's first come, first serve, right? Because if you see a project that loses funding, we don't automatically come back and backfill for it. But it wasn't intended for this purpose, but we have built a little bit of a capital reserve for unplanned, unneeded capital that it's going to be up to the council to exercise, your judgment on when to tap that and when to hold on to the
And that
capital
will involve
reserves.
other agencies, because we're not, none of these are funded
Yeah.
unilaterally.
Um,
Do you have any other?
I had one more
questions? Yeah, go ahead.
question.
Yeah.
In the last slide you were sharing, it labeled several of those line items as unencumbered.
yes.
And in my mind, I think I'm more thinking of the dictionary definition of encumbered, unencumbered. So it seems like it was allocated, at least.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the difference? What's the nuance between unencumbered and encumbered?
Very simply, in the financial system, funds are encumbered when a purchase order or a contract is set up saying, okay, there's money in the budget for this. We now have a contract with a vendor or purchase order. So it's essentially the legally obligated under a contract as opposed to funding set aside for it. So the legally encumbered dollars that are tied to current contracts, current purchase orders, those roll automatically.
And the reason why because I think I understand that, but I think from a council perspective, those are monies that are allocated. And in my mind, even if they're PO'd, there's still mechanisms to pull it back and everything. So in some ways it feels strategically like it's about the same. So I'm just trying to figure out how we might think of it differently between unencumbered and encumbered.
Yeah, it's let me think about that a little bit.
Because those are all aligned with our priorities, whether they were encumbered or not. So if there's contractually obligation or not a contractual obligation, I'm still.
So to me,
Good.
from a like layperson's perspective, which is what I am kind of hearing the question is like, it's a like accounting technical nuance that we're trying to like, well, like, why would you say anything is unencumbered if it's been appropriated in the budget? Is kind of what you're asking.
Allocated, aligned with our priorities.
Yeah.
No matter whether they're contractually obligated or not. I was.
So one way to look at it would be, and I don't know if this is answering your question, but you could have a line item stay unencumbered the whole fiscal year and never go to PO or contract. And the way we would align that with our strategic plan is like, say there was a project that was supposed to start in Q3. The money's appropriated, some emerging priority happens. Now we're gonna push that project to Q1 of the next fiscal year. Those monies would stay unencumbered all the way through the next fiscal year. And then there would be the rollover conversation. And so it is possible, and it does happen, that sometimes nothing ever goes to a contractual obligation. And so it stays in that kind of like holding pattern. It's like both appropriated and unencumbered at the same time until that contract goes to execution. I mean.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I'm just when I'm almost saying it out loud so that when folks ever watch this again, it's more
So-
like, these are aligned with our priorities, and whether they're encumbered or not, we're saying like, these are still moving forward, whether they're.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You don't want people to misinterpret unencumbered as not dedicated toward.
Because they are,
They are dedicated.
but it's just one more step of, we actually have a contract with a vendor or with our people.
Or, I mean, and I think you're speaking to this new language around strategic plan. If those dollars were to be appropriated to something else or dedicated to something else, that would be transparent, and that would happen at a council meeting and with public input. So it's dedicated until the council says otherwise. Maybe that's a way to kind of articulate it. And
Another way that might help a little bit, and this isn't 100%, but generally these unencumbered amounts fall into the category of one-time money that was put in. It's not like, hey, you have a budget to do economic development and you spend 93% of your budget, and so the money for your economic development that he didn't spend, should carry forward into the next year. We have a new budget for economic development. You approved a budget for this year's work plan, so it's really for that kind of the one-time project, the one-time initiative, the one-time expenditure that was not spent or obligated. That's what falls under these unencumbered carryovers. And the auditors will ask us, on what authority are we amending this year's budget to bring those forward? That's why it's the council item. It's to satisfy the auditors as much as anything.
And then from an operational standpoint, when I look at those, is for the unencumbered dollars, is those are the flex dollars, to say I had an emerging priority. I'm not gonna get to that. I know that operationally, I'm gonna shift them right now and then put a delay on that project moving forward in order to capture the emerging issue or the one that's got a higher priority for the budget need.
Okay.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah, no, we're great. Look forward to seeing that in September. The next one is the Financial Enterprise Resource Planning ERP conversion.
Yeah, we sort of added this a little bit as a filler because of all the work that's gone into our ERP, and we were meeting with the subcommittee, and Christine suggested that we provide you an update, which we were happy to do. I actually say it's segues fairly nicely from the conversation that we've just been having, because the need to be a little bit potentially more disciplined with the budget.
Who's Tyler?
So Tyler is.
Oh, it is?
This is Tyler.
Does Tyler get his name up there?
That's a very special guy.
He's a special guy. Okay.
Tyler Tech.
Yeah, I mean, so this is just a
See
quick
who they are.
update, high level on basically what's been a year-long project to
Yeah.
transition from our other Tyler Eden to the Tyler ERP.
Okay.
And on the one hand, it's a huge enterprise-wide software system implementation. At the same time, it is basically updating the tools that the city has available to manage its resources, track its resources, help ensure budget accountability, alignment with the work plan. So, and it ties in particularly as we get a little bit tighter with the budgets and need to be a little bit more sort of on top of where we're at and what flexibility we have and don't have. We're confident, I think, that this tool will ultimately be really, really useful. Just by a quick way of update, just took some of these slides from presentations we did with staff, right? We call it the ERP. Councilmember Hill, you know this probably as well as Kate, multiple modules make up the ERP. It's not one thing. The phase that has been initially implemented, phase 1, is the financial system that has all the general ledger, updated chart accounts, and all the other green modules. Phase 2 will be the human resources management system and payroll module, and we'll give you an update on the schedule of that implementation. I don't know if I can, if you can see that. So the per actual direction from city manager, and even though this is a public meeting, I'll just say it. Her and I went back and forth on this for the last year of, all in. And Christine was very consistent on, let's just make sure we're focusing on the essential core modules and core functionality that we need. So this chart shows a little bit, essentially the modules that we went live with on July 1st. And then there are certain modules and some functionality within those modules that will be coming online in the second quarter and the third quarter as we kind of make sure that the core system is working and core functions. And then we bring on board additional functionality through the first quarter and second quarter, which is labeled on this chart as phase 1B. Just to give you an example, right, the core functions in place initially. First, when you see for Q2 October, so accounts payable, we successfully ran our first check run last week, which is great. I'm waiting for the bank to make sure that all the checks cleared. We're there. Shocker. All of our accounts payable checks historically from the city are paper checks. We cut checks, we tear up checks, we stuff envelopes, and we mail envelopes. The next step is to transition to electronic payments. And so that's, let's not kill ourselves to make that jump when we need the core function in place, but getting the information from the vendors and the bank accounts and working with the banks to then be able to issue, both receive invoices electronically, scan them in, process electronic payments is coming. Kind of general billing, cashiering. We have a number of third-party systems that are used primarily for kind of credit card processing, and recreation has one system, and Public Works and CDD have another system. You're maybe aware of the project in community economic development on the new permit system. So we're kind of waiting for that system to be fully implemented before we kind of transition all of these other billing systems, integrate them into ERP as opposed to doing them kind of piecemeal. So those are two examples of functionality that we're going to kind of grow into. Last one I'll highlight it because it's near and dear to me. We do have the budget module that's up and running because we brought the adopted budget into the system. We'll be doing budget adjustments, but we did not develop this year's budget in the new system. When we get ready around January, February to kick off the budget process for 26-27, we will be doing that in the new budget module and getting rid of Excel and spreadsheets and emails to coordinate the budget process and build it into the ERP system. Last thing I'll say on this one is phase 2, which is the HR and payroll system. We actually originally we're going to kick that project off last January and then go live this coming January. So it really kind of straddled, overlapped the finance system, but because of the workload and competing demands, we originally pushed it out to start in July and go live in July. And as we were getting ready to kind of kick that project off, I guess astute observation, we are now kicking that project down another 6 months. So we will be kicking off the HR and payroll December, January, and then going live with the new payroll system of July of 27, which gives us a little bit of relief in terms of the, actually in 27 is when we'll be going live at the end of phase 2, that last column.
Okay, January 20.
We're going
Okay,
to kick it off in 26.
got
The
it.
other actually benefit of doing that, which is why it was originally Jan 26, is it's so much easier to transition a payroll system on the calendar tax year
Oh, okay.
than in transition payroll systems and tax tables and W-2s in the middle of
Yeah.
So good news is we still have significant work to do on the financials, but it's been going relatively well thus far. The delay in kind of kicking off phase 2 is not only giving us the time to sort of fine tune and build in this other functionality, but we're also doing some pretty, I think, impactful work in evaluating our current HR, processing and payroll processing. Again, so we're not just taking the way we're doing HR and payroll stuff now and bringing it into a new system, but taking a look at it. And so when we're ready to re-engage on that project, it'll be the process that we want to build into the system, not the historical process.
Fantastic.
So before we do questions, if you don't mind, I just have a couple of points that I wanted to add on. I want to reframe the delay to strategy, because the initial, what Paul was speaking to, the initial schedule was really what Tyler Technologies came in and said, do it this way. And so this affects every single, employee to some extent, but some more significantly. And so as we're looking at the strategic plan and capacity, and like there's this change, or saturation, right? HR is implementing a UKG product, which is a recruitment and performance management tool. It's like, how much can you change with the same power users at the same time? So we were trying to be really deliberate about making sure, like, faster isn't better with this stuff necessarily. I mean, it can cost a little bit more incrementally over time, but the strategy that the team has employed is it's an upfront investment in not having to do rework and reintegration and reconfiguration on the back end. And so I'm really proud of the team and how kind of best practices forward and best practices in the world of ERP. As you know, Councilmember Hill, have shifted and changed, like best of breed, ERP, all the things. And so we're trying to take all those lessons of the last 20 years and make it be the right fit in the right time frame for San Rafael. I also just have to say that I have a little ERP PTSD from prior lives.
The county.
And I want to commend Paul and the extensive team for how remarkably successful this has been. He keeps saying, well, we're not done yet. To have a go live of July 1 and to have basically a handful of bugs and staff on site available, both Tyler and Rayanne in finance has done a remarkable job. They did tons of training. They were available for anybody who needed help. And I'm almost like, I'm not shocked because the team's amazing, but of all the ERP system implementations I have ever heard of, I would say, like, I'm very proud of the team that I think we've got a model implementation, because they put the time and energy into the change management. They put the time and energy into making sure there's organizational readiness, and then the technology will be embraced because of that pre-work of really looking at the process and policy and making sure that's solid before we throw another tool overlay on it. So I really appreciate the extensive amount of work that's gone into this so far. I keep haven't heard anything going crazy. So anyway.
And when will the entire council be updated? What you just said, so you get the kudos, because I do like it's kind of like go slow to go fast, or whatever it is. Like, you can't do it all at once and being really strategic. It's not a headline on the IJ, thank God, because I see a lot of other jurisdictions.
Yeah.
But I would love for the rest of the council, I don't know if that's a council meeting thing or if it's just a Friday memo thing.
I think it's a council meeting. I think this is a really big deal.
It's a backbone, right? I mean, it's a backbone to the work that we're doing here.
Well, we look at high functioning government as one of our priority areas.
Yeah.
And transparency and budgeting.
Yeah.
And it's, upping our game, up-leveling our game in a huge way. There'll be a lot more transparency for the public. So, and to Paul's point, the segue into the fiscal year end close and how we're monitoring and tracking the budget, it's a really great segue, and even just show the community a little bit of the visual of, behind the curtain of how sophisticated of a system we're implementing here.
That's fantastic.
I was just going to underscore kind of one aspect of what Christine said. One of the things that has made this project, continues to make this project challenging, but also kind of interesting and exciting is, from kind of my perspective anyway, the city never fully implemented the legacy ERP. The way we used it, it was like, so when it's one thing, it's a challenge enough to go from an ERP to an ERP. It's another thing to say, well, we never used the budget module in the old ERP. We didn't have appropriation controls in the ERP. We didn't have workflow. So just the concept of building those things into a system. So we have both the, here's what these systems can, should, and could be used for, and then this is the system that we're using and how we've designed it. So it's sort of the change management piece isn't just there's a new interface. The change management piece is, why do I need to
You in the first place.
be using it?
Yeah,
That's a
well,
challenge.
my hope is, when the time comes, my hope is that the narrative really is that irrespective of the depth of the usage of the previous ERP was maybe shallow, by sheer attention to process and intelligence, the city was able to obviously carry forward the business, but that with the investment and the transformation into the fully adopted ERP, we're able to conduct a lot of that business in a more efficient and reliable way. It was always reliable before, but it really required probably a lot of human intervention to make it work.
And it's gonna take some time to grow into it. Like I said, I'll be happy when we get the next budget in place, but, and we didn't build a system, we said for like today or, July 1, we're trying to build a system so that it's gonna serve the organization and staff council well into the future. So that's,
I think that statement's the most important. I mean, the ethos is we're trying to put systems and processes in place that reflect the evolution of local government, right? And the sophistication and how you said that we're leveling up here. Christine couldn't have said it better. And that's a priority of the council and no priority of staff. And it's hard to do. And I'm thrilled to hear this because it's much easier to do status quo and limp along and use part of a product and not go all in. And this is really where I believe Sarah Bell continues to excel and we need to go. And to have this concrete example, amazing.
My user
Yeah, it's a
information.
question.
Go ahead, Councilman.
So we're at August, so we went live on several of these in July. Are there any departments or people that are having to do kind of two processes right now, or is it all cut over?
how do I answer this? Yes, but only because the way we've done the implementation is we are actually closing 24-25 in the old system.
Gotcha.
So there's still year-end things. So there's a little bit of, and you pay this invoice. It's like, well, this is in 24-25. You're doing it Eden. We're bringing over all those encumbered purchase orders and contracts, now transitioning to a system. There's some duplication just to kind of get over that hump. But in terms of, going forward activity, we are fully in ERP.
Gotcha. So maybe I'll reflect it back. People are having to do two processes, but it's not they're having to do it twice. They do it once the old way for now until we close out 24-25, but they're doing new things in the 25-26 year in the new system. Is that right?
Yeah, with the exception of like, well, this was a purchase order in the old system, but we need it as a contract in the new system. So you're going to re-enter it anew as a fresh new contract. But some people say that's duplicating. We're saying that's part of the,
But that would probably taper in the next 3-4 months.
Next 30 days, 60 days.
Operationally, it really has not been that impactful. For me, that's my comment. I'm giving my comment on this. Is I've implemented this in 3 different cities. this is the most seamless one so far. And I think it goes to Christine's point about the kind of the change management. This one slowed it down because we're all geared up to go quick. We're like, hold on, let's understand how we're going to implement this. It's enough where I took some of the learning lessons from this project and applied it to the OpenGov to see we're doing the same, we're on the same track to basically implement both of them at the same exact time with the same exact people, and it wasn't going to work. So we slowed down that project a little bit, recognizing I need the foundational backbone before I implement a new permit system with revenue and permit pieces that tie into the same systems. So there's some strategic pieces that are better suited for us.
And then my second question was, on the previous slide, I saw the general ledger was red. Is red good?
That is great.
Here's the thing, an accountant put that slide together.
Well, I saw red. I was like, is it red?
We're in the green.
We're in the great, we're in the
The
great.
point with the general ledger is sort of the backbone. You'd say it's the
The priority.
alphabet that we use to track, and we actually revamped the entire chart of accounts, which that alone is a shocker because everyone's just used to,
Yeah.
here's the code I use, and everything's in one contract, professional service contract account. Now we have like 11, right? Because you have
Oh, no,
audit and financing.
That's good.
project
I just want to
management.
make sure red is good.
Yeah,
Red is
red is
good. Red is.
I'm used to not saying red is good.
It's okay, I was asking about the acronym and who Tyler was, so you can ask about colors.
Yes,
Okay.
carry
And-
forwards, Tyler, and red.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any-
I won't.
I'm here first.
Bother you.
Any other
Or just
comment?
say to her point is that we're also, and Christine has asked for this, so we're doing it a little bit more diligently, is we are tracking sort of all of the support tickets and what types of issues are popping up and, how responsive are we to dealing with them. Most, they've been fairly benign. Most of them are, adding a user needs to have a little bit more access or a little less access, but I think most of the transactional stuff seems to be working. So it's really on the system administration side. Like, I can't see the menu well, here's the reason why, but we're tracking the support request tickets and our response time, because there may be some issues that pop up that say this isn't just individual user issue. Hey, we have a trend here. Let's look at why 7 people are having this issue. It's a different response to why one person is having an issue.
So when it gets brought forward to the council, whenever that is, to show how awesome under want to have high functioning government, because I think about this, I think about the C-click fix, like I think about some of these systems, because it's not just this, it's actually the whole tapestry of what the city is doing. I think that's where the really powerful narrative is, so.
Totally. And one of the things that we can do, we can talk about this, is just even showing a simple like report of a budget to actual, just to illustrate like what is the power of it, not to kind of go through that, not that we would set an expectation that we would bring that level of detail to the council or to the community all the time.
Yeah.
But to Paul's point about redoing the chart of accounts, that's no small feat.
No, no.
And from my perspective, the value of the financial system, other than the internal controls and the that sort of thing the success is really defined by how valuable the data and reports are that come out of it, right? So if your chart of accounts is no good, then the reporting can be great, but it's not actually going to be valuable or meaningful in figuring out like, how do we do a better job managing our resources and planning for them, and how are we spending money and are we getting an ROI on that spend is going to be a level of analysis we're going to be doing and have the opportunity to do more transparently because of the system and the robust reporting, because it's got a solid GL.
Fantastic.
Yay.
Yay.
Wow,
Awesome.
this feels like one of the few narratives out there. It's like, hey, my ARP project went really, really well.
Said no one ever.
Said no one ever.
Except for Val.
Okay, the next time we have future agenda planning. Did you want to speak to that, or it'll be when it'll be?
Part of this is for you as a subcommittee to tell us topics of interest that you might want us to bring forward. We can tell you what we're planning, but it's also an opportunity for you to say, we'd like to hear more about X, Y, or Z.
Well, I think we talked about before that we put to a future one, because I think that is been an interest of the council is all the fees associated with community development. So you've already talked about that.
Yeah.
We already talked about the federal dollars, like, I'm just hearing from the community, like those are the hot ones. I don't have any that off the top of my head.
Well,
Do you have one?
You had raised, and it was kind of adjacent, was how do we explore additional opportunities for revenue generation for the city, because there's such a huge amount of reliance on, certain sectors here for sales tax. And then obviously we have renewals of some of our tax measures. But I don't know if this is the right subcommittee to start at least hearing about that, because it's only going to become more and more critical that we tap into ideas. So I don't know if that's a topic or if that's something maybe not in the next meeting, but something that at a future meeting we should consider.
Yeah, John is working on kind of an overall revenue, and there's 2 or 3 different objectives and activities in the strategic plan that specifically call on evaluating paramedic revenues, paramedic tax revenues, library, Measure D, renewal, or some other broader strategy. So we are working on that in real time with Charles Heath, and so it would be totally appropriate for us, probably sometime this fall, to bring an item and say, kind of, here's the evaluation so far, and get some input from the subcommittee, because some of those will require council action, right? Anything that's coming on the ballot, and the strategy of timing is if then if that doesn't happen, then we're going to do this. And so we can develop a strategy, which is kind of plan A, plan B, plan C, and that's what we're working on right now. So we'll add that.
I think fall is the timeline, because there need to be council action like in the spring with the library, the tax expiring this year. And rather than just doing a straight renewal, there's a discussion about how do you look at the big picture and what's the right thing to bring forward in what sequence, but there may be something on.
That'd be good. That's a good one.
This fiscal year.
Okay, fantastic. Anything else on this agenda? Okay, we are so good. Okay, meeting's adjourned.
Great.
You got it.
I guess I should turn this off.
It's good.
Stop recording. So you should be doing it on the net.